Hello, Chris Green here with the Flood Insurance Guru. Today we're talking about Rogers Mill, Oklahoma. And we're talking about these flood map changes that are happening in Rogers Mill, Oklahoma. You know, FEMA makes these changes every once in a while. Could be every 3 to 5 years, could be 15 years, could be 20 years. Ask Houston. They may have not had a flood map change for 20 years and they had 3 in 6 months after Harvey. So it's important to understand when these changes happen, what your flood insurance options are, can you fight these changes, and what you can do to minimize your risk. So we're going to talk about those today. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Then we're going to talk about your flood insurance options, and we're going to talk about if you can fight it. So let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good are properties that might be moved from a high-risk flood zone. These are areas of A and AE that might be moved to X. The bad are areas that might be moved from X, which is that non-mandatory zone if you have a mortgage, to A or AE where it now is required. Then there is the ugly. And these are maybe going from A to AE where you're looking at a higher premium because you're going from a high risk to a higher risk. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what are your flood insurance options? Well, these are something you really want to be careful with. You've got multiple options here. Let's talk about the National Flood Insurance Program first in Rogers Mill. And what we're talking about here is the National Flood Insurance Program first. Now, technically, you have two options to the National Flood Insurance Program. You have what's called a standard policy, and you have what's called a newly mapped policy. The main differences between these two are wait periods. There's a standard 30-day wait period with a standard policy, but with a newly mapped policy, there's a 1-day wait period. It's also important to understand that newly mapped rates have special exemptions or special rates. You know, these are basically preferred rates for the first year. So it's important to understand this. If you've gone from that low risk zone to that high risk zone within the last 12 months, more than likely you qualify for a newly mapped rate. This is an area that we see insurance agents make a mistake on almost every day, where people are overcharged $1,200, $1,500 a year because they didn't know to ask for that newly mapped rate. So that's important to understand. Then there's the private flood insurance option. You know, maybe you haven't had any claims on a property. Then maybe private flood insurance is a good option for you. You know, maybe you didn't have an issue with flooding back in 2018 and 2019. You know, it could be with private, you might get a rate that's 40, 50% less than the standard flood insurance rate. And we're not talking about the newly mapped rate. Those are special rates that usually are your best option that first year. Also, with private, there's a lot more coverage available compared to that $250,000 that's currently available through the National Flood Insurance Program. These are some of the differences here. Now, it's important to understand with private, though, they kind of make their own underwriting guidelines, which means if you have a claim, you very well likely could be non-renewed. Or you could just be non-renewed because they don't want to do business in that area anymore. Then you may have to go back to the National Flood Insurance Program with that standard rate, which could be significantly higher. Now, let's talk about, can you fight these changes? You absolutely can through a process called the Letter of Map Amendment. We help people with this every day. And this basically states that FEMA has put you in a high-risk flood zone, but you have the documentation that proves that you should be in a low-risk flood zone. So if you've got questions about how to fight it, you know, what is the best flood insurance option for you? How do you minimize your risk of your property flooding? Then make sure to visit our website, floodinsuranceguru.com. Remember, we have an educational background in flood mitigation, which means we're here to help you understand flood risk like this right here. Your flood insurance and mitigating your property long term. Thank you.